Hey out there, all you YouTube people. Coming to you today to show you a place I like to go sometimes. I go here sometimes to collect my thoughts, but also to pray when something important is on my heart. Not for the reason I'm about to show you, but this is just happens to be. This thing here I'm about to show you is something that happens to be out here. But look at this. Look at this. See this? Look at this. It's a cemetery with some real old graves in it. Some people that, they died a long time ago. And 1831, 1830. But I'm not coming here to talk to you about dying or death or anything like that. I want to talk to you about retirement and what that means and what that should look like in the life of a Christian. Uh, in recent times, there's people on my job that are retiring. They're being offered retirement packages. The company's having difficult times, and I think they're, you know, thinking out with the old and in with the new. It doesn't interest me, but there are people that appeals to. But there's a lot of conversations going on, about it and whether or not it'd be a good thing to accept it. And I have one particular coworker that he uh, he takes off like pretty much the whole month of December or January because he likes to hunt. And this is not meant to pick on him or anything like that, but uh, I think that retirement, the idea that people have of retirement, that they're going to retire in their golden years and that they're going to finally take it easy and stuff like that. Well, I think God gave you the talents and abilities that you have, and they've been in you your whole life. And certain parts of the Bible point to it that those characteristics and things were there even before you were formed in your mother's womb. So it's been there the whole time. So if your idea of retirement, a person's idea of retirement is that they're going to work a job that they tolerate, working for someone else for, most of their healthy life, and then go find a rocking chair somewhere and sit down. Well, you know, this is like a misuse of the talents that God gave you. And you can be sure that he didn't call you to go sit in a chair your whole life. Your calling, your calling is something very important. You know, there's a lot said about that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Uh, and that's true, that's Jesus, and that's the very first words in the book of John in the New Testament. But it's not only that he was the Word, he was the will of God. His very existence, his very appearance on this earth where me and you can see him was the fulfillment of God's will. And the same thing goes for you and for me. Your existence here, your very presence in the world, is an indication that you're a part of his will and that you have a specific role to play in that. And to me, it seems as though life is a process of trying to understand what you're called to do and what you've been ordained to do by him, and skilled and prepared, at some point in the past that we don't understand, to do a certain thing. So let's say that you had a job that, it paid the bills, or maybe it even paid pretty good, or you thought you saw a way to climb the corporate ladder and be some kind of big boss or something like that. Well, if that's not what you were called to do, then it's as though you've been duped. It's like you've been tricked, and that actually you went astray a long time ago. You could even go so far as to say that, maybe it's a form of sin, that you're not living up to your potential, they'll say, but usually they mean putting out, or, making a substantial effort when they say that. But if you've given all your time and all your energy and your health in many cases to something that's not your calling, then did your life really matter? Did you do what you were called to do? And we've all been ordained and planned and laid out in advance by God's will for certain things. And if you work a job that is, you know, you can find meaning in a lot of jobs, you can find enjoyment in a lot of jobs, and some jobs have social elements to them, or some people hang out with their coworkers. But all of those things are really irrelevant if it was the effect of wasting your time for, you know, 20 or 30 years to get what? I don't think they even give a gold watch anymore. Used to, they would, have some kind of presentation or a ceremony or something. They said, well, here's, what's his name? He's been 100 years at the company, and we're going to present him with a fake gold watch. Well, they don't even do that anymore. Uh, but what is the light at the end of the tunnel? What is the reward for your obedience and or disobedience? So I would suggest to you and to myself not to look at retirement as some kind of end goal where you've in effect wasted your life, but rather to look at your current employment situation or your business if you have one, and look at, well, if my time is not spent managing my business, or uh, working at someone else's business, or any number of different things like that, customer service or maintaining relationships, if your time is no longer spent like that, and you find yourself to have in a position that you have the resources, financially or otherwise, and the time to do as you choose, what will you choose to do with that time? Now, Recently at my job, I hear these people and they say, well, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, or I'm going to do nothing for, well, he didn't call you to do nothing. And I would say you are squandering your time if that's what you do when you retire. Or you hear people say, well, me and my wife, we're going to buy an RV and we're going to travel the country and we're going to see all the sights. Okay. You hear all these different things, or we're going to finally go to Europe and see what it looks like over there. It's nice to have goals. And, if you want to take a trip or do something fun, that's cool. I don't see how the Lord would object to that. But that's not a way of life. And working a work or doing a job that's not your calling is not a way of life either. It's, depending on the kind of work it is and how far away it is from what you're called and ordained to do, it can be real drudgery. It can be horrible to have to function in that capacity when that's not at all who you're called to be. So, but I want you to think about that. Now, if you say, well, I'm going to try to discover what my calling is. Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. The talents and abilities and things that you notice and conclusions that you come to and the way that you reason and things like that. Uh, if you ask your family, uh, a lot of times they see that and you don't. And I tell you who else sees that is the enemy of our souls. And he's got many names. You know who I'm talking about. But it would be his will and not God's to hijack your skills and to take your skills and to misplace them or to squander them and to waste your time, the time that you've been allotted to spend before your body goes to a place like that. Of course, you'll be gone, but you're going to have to account for how you spent what you were given. And the parable of the talents talks about that. And, Jesus mentioned that. Now I go a little further down this route and say, well, if, if you say, well, don't worry about money or resources or anything like that. Just live your life. You only live once. Just spend it all and live as you please. It's hedonistic and disrespectful, in my opinion, for a Christian to make such a statement. But people think like that. Okay. Or I've got enough to pay my bills and okay, well that's enough. I don't need to chase money. People make statements like that. But you can earn money and you can even attain wealth without compromising your salvation. You can make wise choices with money without doing anything wrong. And for the times that you fall short, your efforts and your motives should be above board and clear and pleasing to the Lord. But you can see that in the parable of the talents that one of them doubled his money. Another one doubled his money. Of course, in churches, a lot of times you hear this referred to as money. And I am right now too. Okay. But the other one, he went and dug a hole and stuck it in the ground. And it might sound kind of weird to folks now, but a long time ago, they didn't really have banks as we know them today. And it was a common practice to dig a hole and put it in the ground in some secret place. In fact, you still hear about uh, treasure being buried or something like that. Well, people really did bury money. In fact, on occasion now, in areas of Britain or Europe. They'll be digging to lay a foundation for a new building, and they, with a track hoe, they will, with a bucket, they'll dig into the ground and uncover a hoard of Roman coins. And when I first found out about that, I thought, man, them things got to be expensive. That's cool. But actually, they're not. They're pretty common. But yeah, people used to bury the money. But the point is that the guy that was in Jesus' story that he was illustrating to everybody was that he didn't make productive use of it. And to any Christian out there that would say, well, I've got enough for my family and we live in a little box and, this is my little circle of friends and all that. Well, what happens when you have a calamity that requires money from a member of your family? You're going to have to go beg. You're going to go have to ask somebody else that's made wiser choices with their money, or they've done better in some way with their money than you have. So living, scraping by like that is no good. It's no good at all. And I'll give you another example. People talk about minimalism. Okay, they say, well, we're just going to have the bare minimum. Well, what happens when an opportunity presents itself? Can't capitalize on it. What happens if somebody needs help? Can't help them. Nope. So to me, minimalism, or just having enough for your family, is a very selfish thing to do, because you can't be a benefit to anyone else, and you can't help people who are in need. You just can't do it. It ain't there. And also, just speaking as a man, your vision is too small. Your scope is about that big, and you're thinking about, well, I got my little 2 kids and my wife, and we got a 2-car garage and live in the suburbs, and so who cares about everything else? Well, uh, you don't care about your fellow man. You don't see the plight of other people. And I know some people, they get themselves into situations that of their own making. But you see people who truly need help, and they're trying to do everything that they know to do, and it's not working for them. And that may be because of a certain amount of ignorance on their part, that their efforts are being wasted just because they're putting them to the wrong work, or they're on a hamster wheel that they can't get off of. You know, Once you help them get off that hamster wheel, you know, instead of saying, yeah, I see you on the hamster wheel and just keep on running, we're good, we're good. you know if you have excess materials or excess money, the first thought should not be, well, how can I spend it? Or, you know I have more of something than I need. You should consider other people. You should have the opportunity and the ability to be generous when when the circumstances present themselves. If someone needs something and you have it, you shouldn't lie. John Chrysostom, he's one of the early church fathers and highly respected globally. They call him the Golden Mouth. He was hugely impactful on the early church, and this is long before any denominations. This is the original church. And he commented one time that oftentimes people have their hand closed when it should be open, and they have it open when it should be closed. And he also wrote a series of 6 sermons called On Wealth and Poverty. And he tells the story in great detail over the course of 6 sermons about Lazarus and the rich man. If you read that, you can find it for free as a PDF on the internet. And if you read that, and you're a follower of Jesus Christ, it will likely change your life. I know it has everyone I know, including myself. But you're not given resources and extra money so you can hoard it or travel the country to see all the sights, or stack it all up, or swim through your golden coins like Scrooge McDuck or something like that. No. So anyway, back to the retirement thing. Okay. Well, rather than work 20, 30, 40 years at a job that is not what you're supposed to be doing anyway, try to identify your talents. And your family can help you identify that, but that's true. But also the enemy, he wants to, you know, if you're, if you have a mind for business or for money, he may help you become an entrepreneur and sell drugs or be an arms dealer, and spark up wars so you can make money. You know, he can be pretty persuasive if he thinks he sees an area that can entice you. Like hedonistic things, or money or power or whatever it is that a person likes. They studying now. They looking at you. They know what you like and don't like. So I would say examine your life and try to understand what your calling is. And this requires humility, particularly knowing that what you have been doing up to now may have been the wrong thing. And that can be hard to digest for some people, especially if they're emotionally or their identity is attached to a certain type of work. But humility to know that you're small and that God knows a lot better than you do. And then the discernment and the understanding to try to understand what that is. And then thirdly, the obedience to do that as best you understand it. And I don't think that that's going to be like flipping on a light switch. I would imagine that would be a progressive realization of His will and your part in it. His will for your life. Because your existence, like I said before, is proof of His will. Your existence is His will. You're not here by accident. You're not here by some cosmic turn of events that, something random. No. And for all you evolutionists out there that you think we came from monkeys, well, maybe you came from a monkey, but I didn't. But on a serious note, I would tell you, well, if we came from monkeys, how come we still got monkeys? You know, or show me a half man, half monkey. Where's he at? Ain't no such thing. This is a lie. But anyway, I hope this finds you well, and I hope that you consider the course of your life and the direction that you head, and that you'll come to identify more and more and discern your calling, what God has ordained for you to do, likely before you were even born, and then progressively move towards that and look at leaving traditional work as we know it for another company or for your own business or whatever it is that sucks up all your time, and look forward to using that time in His service as He intended all along. And in that vein, I would say that that's not really retirement, but it's actually a beginning and a right turn after a long, long uh, wrong direction or having gone astray. So, for all you retirees out there, look at that. Is that your destiny? Or is it something better? Don't think that was God's intention, was for you to, survive a job and then go do that, you know. I don't believe that. God ain't wasteful. He is infinite wisdom. And in his infinite wisdom, he brought you here. I hope you do well. Till next time.